If any of you are old enough to have watched the Beverly Hillbillies, you might remember as they were driving along the road in that big old flatbed truck, and Granny Clampett was in the back of that truck in her rocking chair with what first came to mind when I first heard of this man's company, Desert Cider House. Desert Cider House is the oldest operating cidery in Arizona, and I have the honor of welcoming its owner, Gregory Asplin. Greg, how you doing, man?
Excellent, thank you.
Good. So, I want to talk a lot about Desert Cider House, but first, I want people to get to know you first.
Okay.
So, we were talking a little while ago, and you are not an Arizona native.
Nope, not at all. I'm a transplant, like so many people out here.
Okay, so you transitioned geographically.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and you were from the LA area, right? Santa Clarita, wasn't it?
That's right. I grew up in Colorado, actually, and moved out to California, but my wife and I had lived in California for years and years and years before we came out here.
So, were you born in Colorado?
I was.
Oh, where at?
I was born in Fort Collins and grew up in Lakewood.
Been there, been there. So, I spent some time when I was on the road back in the 70s, going through Colorado and going through Colorado and going through Colorado. So I loved it there, although it was a little cool.
Yeah, that's I say that I did my time there. You know, I did my time shoveling the snow and scraping ice off my windshield. I mean, it's gorgeous 5 months of the year, and the rest it's a little chilly for me. So Arizona's been great to me.
Yeah, I love it here. I got here 43 years ago, and although I've had to go back other places a couple times, I've lived here 31 of those 43 years. I always come back to Arizona because I just love it. So, what did you do in California?
I'm in IT. I would say my regular day gig is working for Bank of America. I support database systems. I actually manage a team that supports database systems for Bank of America.
Oh, so it's all your fault.
I'm sorry?
It's all your fault.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So, I'm intrigued though. What brought you from California to Arizona? I always ask people this when they come from somewhere else. What possessed you to come to Arizona?
Well, really it was the confluence of several things. We were looking for a house, and that was when we came was at the end of 2005. And so we were looking for a house out in LA, and I mean, you just couldn't find anything that was even remotely reasonably priced. So, we were looking at a 3-hour commute driving from, Palmdale to where I needed to work, and it was just not going to happen. So we started thinking, well, maybe there'd be a better place for us to live. I was, at the time, it was Countrywide, and they had a big presence here in Chandler. And my folks lived out here and had been living in Gilbert for a long time. And my wife's grandfather lived out here. He was a World War II vet. So, my parents aren't spring chicks anymore, and he was getting on in age. So we thought maybe that would be a good, idea to come out here. We'd have time to be around our families, and we could actually afford a house out here. So really, I mean, that was the bottom line. Countrywide paid for me to move out. They had a position, a place for me to be out here, so it was kind of a no-brainer. We came looking one weekend, and the third house we saw, in Gilbert, we bought. So,
and you managed to avoid the fall 3 years later.
Yeah, we bought in right at the height of the market, so that was perfect. It then proceeded to tank, but we bought a house that we could afford. We didn't go beyond our means or anything, and so we lucked out. We were able to stay in that house for this whole time. We just recently moved again, but yeah, it finally recovered from that crash.
So you didn't let people keep talking you into writing a new mortgage on flash paper?
No, not at all. I mean, and that was a big thing for us, was that, we really were looking for something we could afford, and that was why we came to Arizona. What we ended up getting was a house that, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that in California would have cost us 2 or 3 times as much, in a great little area, and we didn't have to bankrupt ourselves to do it.
That's actually fairly close to here, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we bought in Gilbert, just a couple miles down the street from here.
All right. And you guys have got a couple of kids too, you and Kristen.
Yeah. We've had two of our little Arizona kids out here. We got a 10-year-old named Zoe and a 7-year-old named Drake.
Very cool. So now, let's get into the meat of this.
Okay.
You're in IT.
Yep.
Doing database work. And you've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
Where in the world did Desert Cider House come from?
So it's kind of funny because my wife and I, we had, a lot of times we'd go out and we'd be looking for, some place to go have drinks and dinner or whatever, and we could never find any local ciders. We looked all over the place for them, and it just, nobody was making them out here. And I thought, how odd that was. Like out in California, you could get a lot of them. You could get a lot of them if you went to places that imported bottles from different states and all, but you had no local hard ciders out here. And I started talking to my wife about it. I said, how hard can this be? It seems like a pretty simplistic process, And so...
Didn't she buy you a kit?
Yeah, that's basically how it happened.
I remember you mentioning that, and I wanted to delve into that a little bit more, because that was an entertaining story.
Well, I said it can't be that hard. I started looking online about it. There's a lot of little forums online for people who make it at home and all, and it really wasn't very difficult. It didn't seem. So she actually, for Christmas in 2015, she went out and bought me a cider making kit from Barnes and Noble, and she's like, "Oh, you should try making it." So
you got to be careful of those books, people. those books can lead you down the path.
Exactly. So I started making cider. We had friends who would come over and play cards or hang out, and we'd give them cider, and they all thought, "God, this is really good. You should try and sell it." And so we were like, well, how hard can that be? So we decided, okay, well, let's look into it. What would we have to do in order to sell it? How cool would it be to go, to the bar on the corner from our house and out with friends, and they had our cider on tap? That would just be the coolest thing ever. And that was really, literally as far as we thought,
That was the thing that fascinated me when I first spoke to you on the phone. You mentioned that your ciders, your hard ciders, are on tap.
Yeah.
And not being familiar with ciders, I'm a whiskey guy, but not being familiar with ciders, I found it intriguing, at least personally, that you could have cider on tap. My exposure to cider has been the ones that you buy in bottles.
Sure.
Right? And so that's just the way I thought of it. But you're on tap in a lot of places, aren't you?
Yeah, well, we got into it, and like I said, I have a day job, so we really couldn't get into the distributing part of it. We just didn't have the time or ability. So we started looking around. We found a local distributor, Arizona Beer and Cider, and they had no local ciders. They carried a couple of national ones, and they said, hey, we'd be really interested in meeting you. So we decided, we really got into it to make the cider, not to distribute it. They have all the infrastructure. They have a lot of accounts and a lot of relationships with bars and people around the state. So we ended up deciding, we'll get distributed by them. We thought about opening a tap room as well, or a tasting room, but then that also is problematical when you've got a day job. When do I do that? And that means that maybe we do it on Fridays or Saturdays or something, but then it's sitting idle the rest of the time.
Yeah, so, and you can't not pay the rent for the downtime,
right?
Which is cost prohibitive.
It made it easier for us to just get it into kegs initially. It was low cost to get into that. We really didn't know if there was a market. We were the first people out here. There'd been some people who'd made cider in the past, but they were usually associated with regular wineries and stuff. So we didn't know what the market would be. So we tried to go into it and pinching as many pennies as possible because we didn't know whether we'd actually sell it.
So tell us some of the ciders.
So we started with just a single cider with Desert Dragon hard cider, which is a traditional hard cider. It's made with, we're one of the only people actually out there making it this way. We ferment it with brown sugar, and then we finish it with brown sugar because we think that the brown sugar is really complementary to the apple. It's very common in the small, people who make it at home to use that, but you won't find it really in any national or larger brands using brown sugar. So that's our signature one. And
it doesn't have a Gila monster as a logo, right?
No, it's not a Gila monster. It is a bearded dragon, and so like I say, that's our signature one. Then we have our Desert Zephyr hard cider, which is it's just a straight apple hard cider that we blend with locally sourced prickly pear juice, organic prickly pear juice from Tucson, and orange. And that one's a little bit lighter on the palate, a little cleaner finish. We call it hard cider, softer side. And the unique thing about those two ciders is that we kind of slipped our kids' names into them. So our Desert Dragon, my son Drake, which is a sort of archaic name for dragon, and then Zephyr for Zoe. All the rest of them, well, they're just whatever we named them, but those are for the kids.
I want to hear about the other ones, but I got to go back to, it's a prickly pear cider.
Well, it's an apple cider. All of our ciders are based on apple juice, but then we'll blend in other juices after we've fermented it. So we have a peach one, we have a pomegranate and cranberry one, and then we have a mulled cranberry one that we do at Christmas time as well.
So let's give everybody your email.
Okay, it's Gregory@desertciderhouse.com.
And
sweet and simple.
DesertCiderHouse.com, when would be the website?
That is exactly right.
You see how I figured that out, people?
We're also on Facebook, Desert Cider House on Facebook. You can find us. And we post regularly on our webpage and on our Facebook page all our new ciders when we put them out. And then also where you can find us because there's a lot of rotating taps out there across the state.
Right. Now, are you on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn, but not Desert Cider House.
We need to see about getting Desert Cider House on Twitter.
We are not on Twitter. Instagram, Facebook, those are our main social media platforms.
Well, we'll see if we can help you get on those and Pinterest and or Snapchat too.
Sounds good.
Because there are different demographics. We may not want to reach the youngest demographic,
right.
although to tempt them for when they get older.
Sure.
So your phone number?
My phone number? 480-292-3020.
Excellent. DesertCiderHouse.com, on Facebook, on Instagram. We're going to work on the rest of them. Gregory,
thank you so much.
God bless you for being here, man. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
I am so entertained by your story, man. It is just great.